Microsoft cut 6,000 jobs in May 2025. It's 3% of headcount.
Microsoft is a business that is focused on still existing in 100 years. It's a lot harder being a good consultant than it is being a good manager or a good leader.
Managers need to be able to steer that business in an air quotes right direction to take their business into AI. And that's easier said than done.
And if you have requirements, you should be doing regular show and tell. Just because someone says they want a black car, that can be interpreted in many different ways, right?
The number of the day is 6,000 layoffs. Microsoft cut 6,000 jobs in May 2025. It's 3% of headcount and is preparing another round in July, aimed mainly at sales and customer-facing teams as it refocuses on AI. What do you think it will affect? Do you think from our delivery point of view, we'll have more people available?
I can go first. I don't think we'll see a huge impact on that when it comes to a partner's perspective. Maybe I'm biased because I'm from Northern Europe, from the Nordics, so the layoffs weren't really in our region in that, in those magnitudes as in, for example, Redmond. Lost some good people from engineering. I'm not gonna say contradict that, but I'm not convinced that there's going to be a huge product or persona impact with stakeholders and the tech per se.
Areti, what do you think that some people say they're all going to be rehired after the financial year starts again?
I mean, some of them maybe. They might go for other positions in Microsoft, because this is the thing with Microsoft. They are laying people off, but then at the same time, there's job ads going out, right? So it's the net effect of it. Will some people want to reapply? Yeah, probably. Will they get hired again? Yeah, possibly. It's the way they work as a business. But what I would say as well is, from speaking to people that work for Microsoft, they tend to also have the mentality that Microsoft has a one-year contract, that if you get renewed, that's a great thing, but you shouldn't assume it. And there's people that have gone through, multiple layoff rounds while they've worked for Microsoft for 10, 15 years. But I think as time goes on, we will see people have worked for Microsoft for many, many, many years, less and less, potentially. So I think there is an element of temporariness when you work for Microsoft. Nothing's forever, but I think even more so now, the way that technology is changing, they have to restructure their business, because I think we have to remember Microsoft is a business that is focused on still existing in 100 years. They are not focused on making money year on year. That's not the game that they're playing from a business strategy perspective. So they have to make choices like these inevitably if they are to continue existing. So we have to remember that as well, as unpleasant as that is.
People think that somehow AI replacing jobs, but what we can hear from Microsoft is not actually that. It's actually infrastructure for AI needs money. If it's a team leader watching us, or maybe like a practice lead, does he need to worry about his own job security, working for a partner, working for a customer? What do you think?
I think we all need to worry about the environment in which we are operating in, because technology and the IT industry in general, we have tough margins that we need to meet. I'm talking about Europe and the UK specifically, because it's my kind of background and experience. So we don't have the unlimited infinite budgets we once had, which were really good fun. We now have customers that are actually looking to reduce their spend and do more with less. And obviously AI is all about doing more with less as well. So they're looking for that kind of economy of scale, for lack of a better word, with their tech. So I think we are, as partners, operating in a more difficult environment now, and our customers are, and that's why we are, and that's why also Microsoft is, because we're all affecting each other. We're all connected in this IT wheel of life. So, but our job titles will change as well, and what we're doing will change. How many of us have business applications in our job titles right now?
Yeah.
Probably won't in a year, if not earlier than that.
Yeah, I think one thing that people need to be conscious of is developing themselves, self-development. I've been telling that story for 6 or 7 years to my colleagues, to others, other professionals, to partners. we all know that it's a constantly evolving journey, being a consultant in business applications or AI or whatever we want to call it. And I think
AI business solutions.
in AI business solutions,
Yeah.
and I think in the past, and I want to argue, I think in the past 4 or 5 years, people have gotten by fairly well without having had a very deep need to dramatically reinvent themselves and to grow professionally dramatically in a dramatic sense. But I think that now in the age of AI, that has finally changed. I've gotten by 5, 6, 7 years without becoming a deep dive learner in Power BI or Canvas apps, and that's been a tech choice for me because I like to wave my hands. That's another story. But in the age of AI, you really need to pick up those skills. Everyone needs to pick up those skills, not just consultants, but also all the management layers. And then are some of those management layers or practice directors, what do we want to call them, will they become redundant? Honestly, I don't know. But I think if they don't get the idea of AI, they will become redundant.
So let me be here the contrarian. So what kind of signs we will have for project leads, team leads to be redundant, to make the redundant? Actually, what we see happening on Microsoft end is more sales and customer service. Humans in the loop need to be stayed around and just checking what's going on there. I feel that more senior role you have in the team, the safer you feel. But what do you think about this more contrarian view?
Yeah, I think your role is different if you're in senior management or senior leadership in a partner, because you're not doing the building anymore. You're looking after the people that are doing the building, but you have different skills and experience that you need to use. Being a good leader, does that change over time to a certain extent, but not as much as being a good consultant, to Antti's point. It's a lot harder being a good consultant than it is being a good manager or a good leader. Not that that's easy for some people to be a good manager or a good leader, but they are soft skills that you need to practice and to a certain extent learn, and then you learn them for life. Whereas if you're a consultant and you're learning skills right now, you are in that endless circle of learning new things on a platform that is changing, on software that is changing, on infrastructure that is changing, on security that is changing, on a cloud platform that is changing. And it's a huge stack, the Microsoft stack. So you have to by default specialize in certain areas of it. It's impossible otherwise to be an expert, so to speak. But it's very, very hard, and you have to be okay with things changing all the time around you and being out of date fairly often. And that can be very unsettling for a lot of people. So it's not for everyone.
Just to be a contrarian again, I think that kind of narrative of change was here for decades now. How managers against consultants, because Areti, I like this angle. So managers against consultants in AI, whose job is more secure? Are you going to replace yourself as a manager?
I don't think that. Well, I think that consultants, I think that's a given. If they don't pick up these skills that are required in today's world, then they are going to be out of date. I think that's a no-brainer. To what extent is something that remains to be seen. How well versed do I have to be in AI, and in which areas of AI? What do I need to be able to build, consult on, and so on? That remains to be seen. But the investment is pretty big. At least I felt that way. Then for managers, I think like my brain keeps coming back to where is our business going with AI. And that's primarily my point when I say that managers also need to be able to pick up AI and understand what it is, especially in an ecosystem, what I call a brand owner ecosystem, where not nearly every single one of us are ISVs, independent software vendors, but we are in a true time and materials or fixed price-based consulting business. So as managers need to be able to steer that business in an air quotes right direction to take their business into AI. And that's easier said than done. I mean, that's a lot easier said than done. I think that's what I'm seeing. The majority of consultancies partners still doing the same thing today as they've always done. We're still in early stages, but the faster we can pivot to being, I don't want to say AI first, but to really have our strategy and our business in AI, the faster we're going to succeed.
AI aligned.
AI aligned, yeah.
Are we ready for Wheel of Fortune segment? How do you feel?
Let's
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah.
Let's do that. Yeah, because we're trying to do something for listeners who joined us first time. We have a list of topics pre-cooked for this session. All of them are very actionable and they were very practical for people who run teams, for people who do delivery and manage delivery. So since we have so many brains on this session, we want just to give you actionable items, but we don't know the topic. No one knows. So only Wheel of Fortune will tell us. So how it works, we choose the topics and then, the Wheel of Fortune will choose the topic and it will choose somebody who has to be contrarian. The working title for that role is F&O Lead, Facts and Objections. And I hope you'll enjoy and you'll have some fun listening to our conversation. So let's choose the first topic. So the first topic is, can somebody read for me because I have it mirrored.
Requirements minefield.
Who will be the contrarian in this call? Oh, it's you, Areti. So that was easy. Okay. So requirements gathering, let's give something actionable. Let's assume you have an elevator pitch and we have like 15 seconds, I don't know, not 50 seconds, half a minute. And just we need to give them like true like meat of requirements gathering, what kind of pitfalls. And Areti, you'll keep us checked if we start going too much into what official Microsoft wants to hear. And you can give your opinion too. So no, maybe Antti, you can start.
No, you Vlad, go ahead. I'll pick your brain based on yours. For this one, I don't want to go first.
Okay, gotcha. Okay. So for me, the key thing about requirements gathering is I actually do not believe in a long list of requirements, all days of waterfall. And I remember I've been on the project years ago in the my corporate days, and we had like a specification of, I don't know, it was like 10 pages, 20 pages. All of them were just requirements. So the next iteration was user stories, which was just a more fancy way of capturing the same requirements. But I honestly believe in workshops. I believe in design thinking. If our listeners heard about that stuff, if you have never checked it, just go and check it. It's just you run workshops, you just ask people, tell me what you're trying to do in your existing system. Tell me how you see your future. And when you can map it out and let everyone else in the room to see what's going on, just even if it's those small stickers matched to the wall, that's your starting point. It's not an Excel spreadsheet. So this is my quick run, and I can obviously go deeper. But yeah, Antti, what do you think?
Yeah, requirements gathering, I think it simply depends on the consultants consulting and then the business users and how they get along. The methodology that we have, whether it's, just waterfall requirements filled in Excel, user stories, and with their acceptance criteria, they can both work. They might neither of them might work. I think it comes down to chemistry and chemistry between those let's say 2, 3, 4 people that are doing the requirements together. But naturally, it's like still the consultant. I think they have the biggest lead on that, and the biggest responsibility is on them. I think that simply time and attitude plays the biggest part. If there's not enough time to do those workshops and to go through those whatever you have user stories or whatnot, and you don't have the attitude to actually go and do it, then we're going to fail. I think those are the two biggest pitfalls. You can do lots of kinds of things. You can do dialogue mapping. I know Paul Colmsey, I try to follow him on dialogue mapping. That's his area of expertise. You can do a lot of different things, but still, no matter how good the consultant is with their methodology, if the attitude isn't there, you're not spending enough time on it, then you're not going to succeed.
Areti, what do you think? Did we share any BS, any things which are unreasonable?
No, I think it's reasonable. I think for me, one thing that we need to remember is that we have a role to play as Microsoft partners, and our client has a role to play as well. And we have all been there where a client comes up with a boil the ocean list of things that they want the software to do. And we know from our experience of projects that if you try to give people too many new things all at once, that will be very overwhelming for them and they need time to adjust. So there is that element of change management that tends to be a little bit forgotten and adoption as well in terms of how new systems are going to be implemented, how our old systems are going to be decommissioned, the data, That gets forgotten as well a lot of the time until it's too late.
Never heard this word. Yeah, never
The
heard this
data,
word before.
yeah. But also the fact that you can't be all things to all people. So if you've got too many stakeholders telling you what they want their requirements to be, and they're very inflexible and they want everything on day one, and they're not willing to make compromises, it makes it very difficult to deliver value quickly. And I think this is a thing that we need to consider when looking at requirements. And that's the minefield of requirements or user stories or whatever we want to call them, is that you should be looking to invest in software and then get value out of it quickly. And the bigger you make your list of requirements, the longer it's going to take for you to have a system that is working and is actually giving value and is fixing whatever problem you're trying to fix by implementing it. And you have to know what that problem is, and you have to know how to monitor it at the end, that it's actually making a difference. So yeah, small steps are better than big bangs. Starting small and then going from there, because once you have something live in production, then you'll get feedback from people and you'll get buy-in, and you have to make sure that people feel like it's their system, not a system that's been put in place. Yeah.
Do you have any horror stories from you can share here? Because I have one. Do you have any?
I have many. I'm just not sure I can publicly talk about them.
Not giving names. Yeah.
I'm trying to think of all
story.
the NDAs I have signed over the years. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
I think I have horror stories of systems going live and no one using them. That cost millions.
Requirements wise. Oh, you can
requirements gathering wise.
Related.
Requirements gathering wise. I've had situations where the client has said, "I don't know what my requirements are. Can you tell me? You're a consultant. Can you tell me?"
You just once. I think I had it every single project, I guess.
Yeah. Can you please give us acceptance criteria?
Yeah.
No, not really. No. We just wanted to do this thing.
Why we hired you, right?
Yeah. Can you write our user stories for us? Can you write our acceptance criteria for us?
Good. There are good ones as well, but I would be lying if I didn't say that there are more bad ones than good ones. Yeah. I don't know if that tells something about me or something else. No. I think for the good ones, very common. I think for the good ones, sometimes you just hit it off with a customer. The chemistry just works. Like I said, I'm repeating myself, and I think when you just hit it off with a customer and you have good chemistry, requirements gathering tends to go a lot easier. The other opposite, I think, is when business simply has no idea what it's like to be in a software project and to, talk about requirements, how to define them, how to define acceptance criteria when they've either never done it before or they don't get training for it. So yeah, I mean, do the pros outweigh the cons in experience-wise? For me, unfortunately, not. I'd say that for actual bigger projects, I have more, horror stories or cons than I do have those.
Antti touches on something very important there, actually, which is the amount of time that a software project takes for the people that need to do these things like requirements gathering. Because a lot of the time, and I'm sure we've all been there, those people have a job to do, and this is thrown at them sometimes very last minute, and they've got to try and juggle having a job or having a team or running the business with having conversations and workshops and giving us this information and documenting what's there to give to the consultants so they can understand it better, that kind of thing. Yeah. So there is, I think, a lot of clients underestimate how much time of their own teams it's going to take to support a software development project. Exactly. And sometimes you get big delays because of that or frustrations. And like Antti says, it's the time. Sometimes people just do not have the time.
And I think a lot of times we go too fast from defining requirements and their acceptance criteria to user stories and their acceptance criteria, again, whatever we want to call it, to actually trying to implement them. And the reason I'm saying that is a lot of times what I'm seeing is when we're coming up with a requirement and kind of defining this is what we want to do, we get an internal debate at the customer on, that immediate first level stakeholder and then their manager, sometimes even, kind of 3 levels up on how should this thing work. The first level stakeholder says that, hey, this is how it works. I own this process. This is how it works. And their manager comes in and starts, contradicting the initial stakeholder. And there's too much internal debate. that I'm seeing with customers. And I think that easily throws off the entire budget, causes the project and budget, causes delays and causes just overall confusion.
Don't you think there is something on us, people who have to supervise and see how consultant interfaces with the end user? If I, as a consultant, spend all day creating this requirement, you need to spend at least 1 hour digesting and writing and giving me feedback. Well, usually the end user has no more than 5 minutes. It should be super simple to digest.
You would have a lot of different levels of detail that are needed. You'll have your product owner that needs to sign everything off and say, yeah, this is what we want. But then when you go up a level, you wouldn't really specifically be talking about user stories or requirements. You were talking about a more generic terms, high-level terms, and you should be. Otherwise, you're going to lose your audience completely. And the higher up you go, the less time those people have. They want you to get in, get on, get out. So if you don't need anything, start by, hey, I don't need anything from you. I just want to give you information on X. Otherwise, be very clear what you're looking for. And we need to be clear as well in terms of who's responsible for what and who makes decisions on what. Otherwise, you're going to have a situation on your hands where you've got a deadlock because people can't agree on a way forward.
How much time we need to assume the VP would spend on signing off those requirements, signing off that acceptance criteria?
I'm a big fan of visualizing things and not humongous blocks of text or lists of requirements or things like that. I think it's if you visualize a process and you say, this is what you do right now, this is how we need you to change the process for whatever reason. I think those are the kind of conversations I would expect to be had at that level, not really the user stories.
So to make it really tangible, are you talking we need to have do not assume that you have more than one slide, or do not assume you have more than 5 minutes, or if you want really have people in the room, go and run some kind of session, be there.
Yeah, I think that the kind of like the first level stakeholder that understands the process that we're talking about should be proficient enough to sign off on that without their higher ups having to contradict them. I think if their higher ups contradict them, then there's a bigger problem. The higher ups would need to understand the high level importance and meaning of that requirement so they can validate that it actually is something that this process revolves around, and then this is the way the process works. There's not a need to change that process. That's of course something that we oftentimes do. The higher up says, hey, we don't want this process to work like this. So it becomes process development, and then things get out of hand. Now, should that happen? I think it depends. You don't want to build a system that's based on incorrect processes. But what I am saying is that, those things should have been thought through before we get into that requirements gathering. And then the higher up should kind of give a glance on, hey, this is what John Doe or Jane Doe are saying about the process. This is how it's defined. This is how it should work. Looks good. Let's proceed.
So just to make it a little bit more spicy, what do you think if it wasn't for contract reasons, for legal reasons, do you think we could get away with not writing any requirements or be as light as possible, just moving from prototype to prototype, just showing to customer every week something new going on? What do you think about this? What's the pitfalls? What's the advantages?
I think that it's a great way to go generally. Even if you have requirements, you should be doing regular show and tells, because just because someone says they want a black car, that can be interpreted in many different ways, right? There's a black car and there's a black car. Seeing the system and getting feedback from users, that's what validates whether what they asked for is actually what they meant. Because a lot of the time we will ask for something and someone will assume that we mean X, Y, and Z, but actually we don't. We meant something completely different. So regardless, I think whether you have requirements or not, you should be doing that prototyping process all the time, because that's the only way you're hitting the target otherwise, and that the target that you're hitting is the target they want you to hit to a certain extent. But at the same time, I think there is that element of the prep beforehand, particularly what problems are you trying to solve, and can you / should you change your business process? Is your business process the problem? Because a lot of the time we've seen situations where a very broken process is implemented in a system, and actually people then start complaining about the system, but it's not the system that's the problem. And you need to try and wiggle that out beforehand, and it's time well spent, because you don't want to spend a lot of time developing software to continue working in a to support the broken process, basically. So for me, the process
Yeah.
mapping side of things is more important than the requirements to a certain extent.
Exactly.
I'm a huge fan of let's just build, but I don't think it works for huge business applications, big systems. It doesn't make sense when you're building a £5 million or dollar or euro ERP. You can't just jump into building and see how it goes. But I'm a huge advocate of that approach in smaller engagements. But I think already you said a lot of the gotchas there. The process, that we have to have an understanding that the process works, that we're not trying to, fix a bad process with a system. But I don't think we need to go all into requirements. I think we can have something higher level and ensure that, like, look at the process and then simply start building and fail fast. And I do think that that's the direction where we're going more and more with agents as well as applications, our Canvas apps or model-driven apps from Power Platform that we can now build with these new things that Microsoft are releasing, where you just give a prompt and you get a pretty well functioning app.
Yeah.
Plan designers,
So
what have we?
So shall we declare in this podcast that requirements are dead? I agree with you. If you can do through prompt engineering build stuff, then fundamentally majority of requirements are driven by contractual obligation, contractual management, relation management, rather than a development need. So this is my horror story. One of consultants years ago, the consultants, he was writing requirements as explicitly as possible, and they were like really elaborated, multiple lines. It was really hard to go through them. And when there was a critical moment came where customer was not agreeing to them, a consultant shown to the end user, to customer, and say, hey, this is what you signed, this is your signature. And the client told, I don't care what I signed up, what I signed off. I don't care about this requirement. What I told this time, I need something else. So fundamentally, if requirement doesn't cover even from contractual point of view, probably in the court it might work, but in real project, if you sweat every single comma, that probably goes away.
Yeah, I think it is valuable because a lot of companies, I think Antti mentioned this as well, they might go into software development projects without having done software development before, or looking into exactly what is involved in software development and what's good software development and what's bad software development. So there is that element of educating yourself before you go into that project and knowing what it will take for it to be a success from both sides of the fence. In terms of our requirements dead, no, I think the prompt is effectively the requirement now. So if anything, they may be more important than ever.
Requirements in Excel.
I mean, wherever you want to have them is fine, as long as, they are accurate, valid, and correct at the time of writing. But this is the thing, we also need to be aware that things change very quickly, as we have talked about earlier. So just because something is the right answer right now doesn't mean it's going to be the right answer later on. And the later on used to be 5 years from now. Now the later on is probably a year and a half from now. AI solutions right now, they'll probably be technical debt in a couple of years, which is crazy. But that's the reality of it. Newer models, newer infrastructure, you name it. It's all moving very quickly to catch up. So we need to be aware that what we're building right now may also have a much shorter life than we've ever expected it to. So the takeaway is that companies laying off people is inevitable if they want to survive. We just have to deal with that change. It's not necessarily always bad news. You never really know what is right for you and what is wrong for you when it happens. It's only in hindsight you find out anyway. We've gone deep immediately. But other than that, obviously we've covered the fact that the kind of requirements gathering exercise, don't boil the ocean, try things out, fail, make it okay to fail and fail fast, and know what you're getting yourself into. Do your research.